Greetings. Hello, everybody. Hello. Hi. Oh my gosh. The fashion of this event is truly phenomenal. And the amount of people wearing American Girl doll things. Did anybody bring their doll with them? Yeah. Excellent. Well, my name is Lainey Rose. I'm the events manager here at City Bookshop, and I was a Molly. Thank you. It's wonderful to be with you all today. Thanks so much for being here in person and for tuning into our live stream if you are watching that way. Now that we are reopened from the Great Flood, for those of you who didn't know, we flooded for a hot minute. We're closed for a month, and now we're back open. Yay! We've got two more events upcoming in August. Two Like the Lightning, Prose Poems for My Almost Loves by Teresa Spencer of the Taffety Punk Theater Company, which will be in store this Saturday. And the next week, we're having a double launch event for romance authors Nisha Sharma and Adib Karam. All the information about our events calendar and our 14 different book clubs can be found on our website. Who here is at the store for the first time? Okay, this is a delightfully small number because in the rest of you, that means, hi, welcome back. Before we get to tonight's event, some housekeeping details. Number one, if you could take a moment to silence your cell phones, please and thank you. Number two, if you need a restroom, it's upstairs past the cash registers and the greeting cards. Number three, we will have time for questions tonight for both in-person and virtual attendees. So even if you're watching via Zoom, you can participate. Please put those questions in the Q&A feature so that we can see them and can ask on your behalf. And finally, most importantly, if you still need to purchase a copy of Dolls of Our Lives, we have copies available upstairs at the cash register and they can be purchased prior to the signing line. Also, our signing line will be mask required, so please wear your mask if you have it with you, and we do have some extra mask at our info desk. So who here had an American Girl doll growing up? Okay, let's get some cheers for that, actually. Yeah. Who here? Can I hear some noise from those that had a Molly doll? Okay. What about a Felicity doll? Okay, horse girls. Can I hear some cheers for Kirsten? All right. What about Samantha? Kit? Kaya? Addie? All right, we've got some good taste here in this crowd. Those are just a few of the beloved dolls that we grew up with and that shaped a generation. I'm personally a Molly girl, but I'm thrilled that we have so many different varieties here today. Combining history, travelogue, and memoir, Dolls of Our Lives follows Alison Horrocks and Molly Mahoney on an unforgettable journey to the past as they delve into the origins of this iconic brand, the 90s most coveted products, the American Girl doll. Our author of the evening is Mary Mahoney, who is a historian, podcaster, writer, and cultural critic. She is most at home in moments where she can think about history and pop culture. She loves thinking about the stories we tell about ourselves and the meanings behind our pop culture attachments. You can follow Mary's, thinking about Molly all the time, She's never left me. You can follow Mary's weekly writing on pop culture and history in her newsletter, Landline. She lives in Connecticut with her wife. And joining us in conversation tonight is Tayla Burney, who is a longtime public radio producer who specialized for years on author interviews and book events. We're very glad to have her tonight. Now on the programming team at NPR, she helped launch the Book of the Day podcast. Tayla's writing and reviews have appeared in the Washington Independent Review of Books and the Washington Post, among other publications. She hopes you spend all of your book dollars at local indies and have at least 2 library cards to your name. Please join me in welcoming our folks of the evening. Here they come. Ba-ba-ba-da-da. Like a little walk-up music. Good. Get under. Get under. Hello.
Hi, everyone. I'm a little shorter, so I'm going to say hi while I'm standing up.
Thank y'all for coming out tonight. I am unsurprised to see such a great crowd. I think the number of DC residents who are American Girl fans is like, there's significant overlap in that Venn diagram, I believe.
Absolutely.
And I'm so excited you're here to talk about the book and the project writ large, the podcast as well. For anyone who is like tagged along with a friend tonight, whose friend was like, get in, we're going, has no idea what they're doing here. They're lost in a sea of doll fandom. Can you give them a sense, describe the project that you and Allison originally set out on in the podcast space and sort of what you thought you might achieve?
Absolutely. Well, first, thanks everyone for coming, and thanks to everyone here on the staff for all of your labor to make this event possible. And I just want to say this is a safe space, and honestly, I feel like really held being together one day after the announcement of J.Lo and Ben's divorce, which we did discuss backstage. To launch this during Leo season is perhaps the most Leo thing that you could do. And Lainey Rose said all flags should be half-mast at Duncan, and I can think of no better tribute. But to answer your question, so Allison and I met in our PhD program at UConn, and my first day there, I was in a class where everyone had to say what book inspired them to be a historian. Like, why did you come to grad school? And everyone was saying things like, I read Foucault and it made me think about the Panopticon and all of these very true, but not necessarily sincere things. And they got to me and I said, I read Meet Molly when I was 9 years old. And everybody laughed. And Allison and I quickly bonded over this. And we kept citing American Girl throughout our time in grad school, even though we were completely wrong many times about the plots. And we even made someone, we were both had food poisoning at the same time and decided on our sick days to make someone whose birthday party we were attending an American Girl doll or American Girl book based on her, but really was a book about us. And we presented this completely seriously as a gift. And when we graduated, it was just something fun we thought we could do together to see if other people felt that way, that they were still thinking about American Girls adults and thinking about how to inform their life. So I'd worked at a community radio station and I'd done a podcast. So we wanted to do a podcast and we put it out there and truly thought no one would listen, but like maybe our friends. My parents were not clear what a podcast was. They were very proud, no idea what it was. And as it turns out, a lot of people found the show pretty quickly, and we had this amazing community develop. And this is going to be a really not great story for those who are struggling to get published, but someone slid in our DMs one day and was like, hi, I'm an editor at Macmillan. You ever thought about writing a book? And we were like, wow, like we are now.
Absolutely. We 100% have a draft.
Yeah. So I think initially we just thought we were really hungry to have conversations with other people who were as influenced by American Girl as we had been. And so that was the original project. And that, truthfully is kind of where we started, and it's become much more.
Yeah. I mean, you have tapped into and helped sort of, I think, provide a center of gravity for a community of people who, as you said, are very much remembering the American Girl dolls and the role that they had in our childhoods, and perhaps that we're seeing them spin off into the childhoods of further generations of our families, right? Which is a fun thing to watch and see. And just as the characters in Sex and the City provide us with archetypes to identify with, so too do the original 6 American Girl dolls, which was your focus, the original sort of set of 6 dolls. You're a Molly.
100%.
And I think something that is so interesting to me that you write about in the book is like the ties and reasons that people feel connected to a particular doll.
Yes.
Some of them are extremely strong, and some of them are very tenuous and superficial. What struck you about the reasons people might have for identifying with any particular doll?
Great question. It's a mystery for the ages, truly. And your answer may change over time. We've had people say, or like people send us their zodiac, like I'm a Molly Moon and a Samantha Sun, and that kind of thing. And just like the zodiac, I think astrology, whether you believe in it or not, is something that you can use to think with, to assign meaning to the chaos of life and your process of trying to figure out how to be a person and how to navigate this world as an adult. And, much like personality testing or any other thing. So, American Girl typology is as good as any to try to parse your own personality and what you're up to. And, we did have someone write to us and say, I'm a Kirsten because my mom works at IKEA. Not sure if that's a really strong reason. If that person's here tonight, I'm sorry. I'm not judging that life choice, just saying. Yeah, but it's a way I think of just trying to find language for your own experience.
And I'm curious, I mean, you're a Molly, as we've established. Is there a doll that you either didn't have as a kid that you maybe coveted, or a newer doll that you're like, I would have had a really great time playing with that
Yes.
character, going into that character story?
That's one of the most fun things about doing the show, is getting to read all of the books that came out after I'd sort of aged beyond it. And the books were always my favorite thing, with the magazine, of course. So when we read the Josefina books, that was the first doll whose books I hadn't read. And I like deeply spiraled because the Catholic guilt and shame in those books is so intense, like to a point where I'm like, Valerie Tripp, what are you up to? Like, who hurt you?
Yeah.
What's happening? So not Josefina, but when we got to Kit and Julie, I loved those books, and I love the Claudie books as well. But someone like Julie, to me, like very queer coded, Kit very queer coded, like that would have been really fun for me to just have that world to imagine myself in.
Yeah. Something that really surprised me in reading the book and was I mean, I had a Felicity doll because I was sort of aging out, but she had red hair, so it was very important to my mom that I have Felicity. Obviously, her character was set in colonial Williamsburg, but I had no idea how integral that living history museum was, not just to Felicity as a character, but the entire creation of the Pleasant Company. Can you give us a little sense of how Pleasant was inspired? Pleasant Rowland is a real person. The Pleasant Company was named after her. She created it, she founded it, and she was largely inspired by colonial Williamsburg.
That's right. Living legend, Pleasant Rowland. She was inspired by two different things. So first she went to a mall and she was appalled by what she saw in the toy store. She called the neon lights of Toys R Us, quote, offensive. And she found Cabbage Patch dolls, quote, ugly. And Teddy Ruxpin was overpriced. And, she was really coming in hot with these takes. And then she went on vacation to Colonial Williamsburg and emerged with a business plan, which is, I'm sure, a very reminiscent experience for anyone here who's ever been on vacation. It's what you do, right?
So relaxing.
Just really relatable content. But she went there, and as a person who had had a career as a television news anchor, as a kindergarten teacher, as a entrepreneur in education, she started a literacy product. She saw their museum and instantly understood what made it unique, which was that they have people who interpret the past, who live as a person in the past, and who teach you about the past, both through individual stories and also through playing with objects. And so noticing that the museum didn't really have a space for children, didn't really speak to children in the 80s, she thought, like Oprah, aha, what if somebody made something that put girls at the center of the story? Kids might be more interested in history, and this kind of is sort of Reagan era stuff coming in, but there was a pearl clutching fear that no one would care about American history in the 1980s. And really, it was conservatives saying that people were stopped talking about a certain kind of history in the 80s. And so likely that was in the mix as well. But she went to Williamsburg and really applied that museum to the early brand.
Yeah, it's very interesting too to note, as you do in the book, that she's an incredibly savvy marketer, and she really, especially as the brand expanded, leaned into those values, right? Like there's this messaging from parents sending in letters about the values of the dolls that I found like sort of interesting and compelling. I mean, but do you feel she had like these altruistic goals as she set out to make like both money and friends, perhaps? Starting closing company.
Can you do both? I mean, I've only made friends, so
you and me both. I work in.
Don't really know how that works. But I do think it was real for her in the sense that as much as it could be sincere. When she was a news anchor, she did this. She was profiled in a San Francisco newspaper and talked about how she understood the goals of feminism, but did not consider herself a feminist. She wanted to make women should make equal money, according to her, but they should retain some femininity. She didn't want women wearing cargo boots and slamming their fists on a table.
Yeah, she has a great quote because she worked in media that I loved that said, newsrooms are notoriously Victorian,
right?
That I found quite telling about her. But it is striking that she is creating this company at this moment when women are in the workforce more. We're losing some of those household skills. Like I could not sew an article of clothing for myself or a small doll. So there was like this kind of loss of skill where like perhaps previous generations were making these heirloom dolls for their family. And then there was also this sense of like empowering kids, right? Like the Victorian sense of like children should be seen and not heard was kind of finally going, right? So there was this like perfect perhaps moment for her to dive in on this. I mean, do you think again that she was just like this savvy marketer who saw this opportunity and went for it, or that she was perhaps driven by that altruism, that sense of values?
Well, I think, she was always in it for the money. I mean, why else would someone, the money is great. Well, this is a person who was appalled by Barbie, and it's not hard to see why. I mean, Barbie was based on a very sexualized doll sold in Germany at a truck stop, mostly to men. And the tagline used to sell this Barbie was, "She's the star at every bar." So Barbie was like firmly an adult and firmly for adult fans. And so being appalled by that, she wanted to make some dolls who would always be 9 years old, never be sexualized, not wear makeup, not have crushes, although you can argue how that played out in the books. But so I think she was driven by her own morality and a sense that, there should be useful play. I think one of the most conservative ideas she had was that, it's not enough to just have a Cabbage Patch doll. Whether or not you think they're ugly, I don't. But
the early ones were a little creepy. I'm not like
they're a lot. I mean, my grandmother gave me one that's a redhead. My grandmother was a redhead, and hers had a sweatsuit like my grandmother's, so it's like very precious to me. But so probably that's why I don't think it's ugly, even though it kind of has a mullet and no shade. I know mullets are coming back, whatever. But
it was the 80s.
It was the 80s, yeah. But I think the fact that she couldn't sit with undirected play, or kids couldn't just have fun. I mean, people took American Girl dolls and did a lot of things with it that she would never have dreamed of, but that had nothing to do with anything educational. But for her, like that was the morality piece. I think she wanted to both make money and have a morality. But at the end of the day, the tell is, Barbie so outraged her and inspired her, but she does sell the brand to Mattel.
Yes.
So that should tell us all a little something.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or again, a lot of money.
750 mil, I think, something like that.
Yes.
Yeah. She's fine.
She's doing great.
She's okay.
Yeah. She's almost become like the Rockefellers sort of funded Williamsburg, and she's sort of doing a similar thing.
Absolutely, in Aurora, New York, where she was originally trying to save the town where her college, Wells College, was. That just closed, RIP. But she basically is renovating that town to be not as it was in the past, but as the past was in her imagination. So it looks like a Norman Rockwell painting. And so some people have bumper stickers in that town that say, Aurora was pleasant before. So, this is a cautionary tale in many ways about what does it mean when we leave our social services to the largesse of billionaires and what they decide to fund. This is not a political podcast.
No, but
kind of is.
And I mean, but I think that gets us to the place where like fandom is a complex thing, right? And I think it's even more fraught today in this era of social media where we know more details about the people who are behind the brands that we love or the performances that we appreciate, right? And it has become fraught to be fans of certain things. And there's a lot of complexity in the American Girl story, whether it's Pleasant herself and her values that she's trying to bring to this market, or some other issues as the brand has gone on. And I wonder if there was any specific fraught aspect of the brand that you were most concerned about diving into, and how your perspective on it has or maybe hasn't changed as you've spent time with the pod and on the book.
So, like I said before we started the show, I had no working memory of the plots. I thought I did, but I did not. I thought Felicity lived with John Adams in Boston, and I was really wrong. But
I mean, look, I'm from Massachusetts. Boston was the center of the colonial universe, and then I was like, "What's Jamestown?"
Yeah.
How dare they?
Wow, fighting words. Yeah, same. But in rereading the books and remembering that Felicity's family enslaved two people, that was a problem in the 90s. And this is not a case where you can say, like, it was a different time, people didn't know. I think we all knew slavery was wrong in 1991 when those books came out, right? But this is where the fascinating piece of rereading the books for me is seeing how they reflect the history of the eras in which they were produced. So actually, I think the Felicity books are more of a tell about the history of the 90s than they're about the 1770s. Because if you recall back in the 90s, as I do, as an fellow elder millennial, and you had a multicultural fair, you would like be a country in your class. Every nation was flattened. There was no meaningful difference between them. And this was also an era where we approached race by saying things like, I don't see race.
Yeah.
I have a Black friend. And so Felicity demonstrates that politics by saying, they have to grudgingly admit her family enslaves two people, but she has a free Black friend.
Yeah.
So the book is working overtime. Val is working overtime to say, yes, I'm historically accurate, but we don't want you to dislike Felicity. She has a Black friend. She's not part of this.
She's cool.
Yeah, she's cool.
Yeah.
So that was what was surprising to me, was not reading that history, but the reaction to us discussing it. Allison was obsessed with reading like reviews and stuff of the show, and I never did.
Read the comments.
No, I can't handle it. I'm too emotional, as Whitney Houston would say. So emotional. But somebody made a Tumblr hate page about our show very early in the show. And I didn't know this. And I went to work and Allison was like, I got to show you something. And I spent a lot of time on Tumblr, so I felt personally attacked. But essentially what they were saying, and I guess other reviews of our show are saying, like, they must hate American Girl. They can't be fans. All the stuff they say about Felicity, like they're scam artists, they're not real fans, all this stuff. Was like, whoa, coming in hot. This is why I don't read. Yeah, this is too hot for me. But essentially, as we were saying before, being a fan means you can love something and hold it to account. That's what it should mean. And so I think seeing pushback on that has been the most surprising.
That is really surprising to me as well, because as you say, I think we should be able to agree on certain like values. Again, back to the values that we can hold.
I mean, I want Leos to find love. Should they find it with each other? No, I hold just a very modern day example.
Yeah, it is. It's vivid and right front and center for us
primal.
at this moment.
Yeah.
As you just alluded to, you and I are both New English.
Yep.
White ladies of a certain age, Massachusetts. We're doing great. And I don't want to assume the same is true for you, but I think you just alluded to this, right? Like I grew up with that, like, we're a rainbow that doesn't see race, like we're all this beautiful melting pot. And I think that did not serve us well. And I have spent a lot of time learning about my own privilege and the ways in which I've benefited from that, right? And I think a lot of people who were American Girl doll fans grew up with that, and then they introduced Addie to the lineup, which created a whole additional set of complexity for people who saw themselves represented, but by a character who's a slave, which brings its own complexity with it, with the narrative. How did talking to people who either felt left out of the lineup of American Girl dolls or felt harmed by some of the choices that American Girl made in creating these characters expand your own understanding of race and different issues in our culture that we're still very much grappling with?
Yeah, I mean, I think, as you say, I'm from Connecticut, which is a state that is mostly known for fictional representations of places that don't exist, whether it's Stony Brook, home of the Babysitters Club, or the Gilmore Girls, etc. But something that is true of real places in Connecticut is that there's a lot of white privilege. And in the class I grew up in school, when I was in elementary school, there were no Black students, there were no students of color. And I went on a field trip to a Revolutionary War house. And at the end of the tour, the woman giving the tour said, "And now we're going to have a tea party. And I'm going to randomly select two of you to be slaves, and you will serve all of us." And I was one of the people selected. Which is wild to think about now. Like, I would hope that would never happen today. But needless to say, with that background, I did not grow up with a lot of inclusive education about many things, including US history. So, in doing that education myself, and as I got older, I mean, what was interesting about writing the book was hearing from Black women about their experience, because of course that's experience that we can't access. And mainly, I think in that part of the book, it was important for us to just kind of get out of the way and also not make assumptions about what that experience of having Addie available would mean to a Black fan. Because, for example, Courtney Price, who was the first paper doll in American Girl magazine, a celebrity to me, said to me, my mom really wanted me to get into Addie, but I always felt like a Molly. And she said, for me, I was important for me to claim that experience and to be able to claim that. And so, it was just really interesting to not make any assumptions in any direction and mainly just listen.
Yeah, I think that is a great approach that you bring to the, again, both to the podcast and to the book. And you also highlight some really wonderful examples of people making the dolls more accessible, whether it's to those who can't afford it all or those to whom dolls are not marketed. Could you share a little bit about the doll libraries? Because that's like the most delightful concept.
Oh, where you can rent dolls. Yeah, that's so sweet. So a lot of public libraries, do y'all have this around here? Yeah. Yes, I love that. Where you can go and rent an American Girl doll from your public library. I hope haircuts are restricted. Hard to say, but Allison actually went and rented a doll with her mom, which was very sweet because she read the books with her mom and made clothes with her mom growing up. But it's such a great accessible program that I wish they had when I was a kid. When they first started, I mean, the reason they have paper dolls in the magazine was for girls who couldn't afford the dolls to be able to have something, in addition to the catalog, which to me is its own dreamscape.
Catalogs were such a, like, just catalogs in general in the 80s and 90s were, I don't know how we explain that to children at this. I think we cannot either. It's like
gone.
A loss.
I hope the Library of Congress has them.
I hope they have them all too. The Delias,
I work at a college, and a few weeks ago I was running a summer program for like 10 weeks with very smart college students, and one of them came to my office for help and was wearing a top that said Delia's on it. And I got really excited and I said, "Oh my God, Delia's." I'm like, "Is it back?
Please tell me it's back."
And she was like as only a college student can, like, make you feel terrible with a look, and was like, "It's vintage." So that was a dark moment for me. I'm not going to lie to you. That was a really dark moment for me. And, I would have taken to my bed, but it was like 11:30 a.m. So when I was at work.
I think you could have called out sick.
Yeah, I should have.
Personally.
Yeah.
I mean, that affordability is a major issue that's been identified with American Girl dolls. I mean, the price points have always been high. But I think there's like an interesting question about the quality, right? Because again, Pleasant wanted these to be heirlooms that could be passed down. And I think, Barbies are much more affordable, but also have, like, I don't know, again, the haircuts, like they get a little rough and tumble.
Well
Barbies.
loved.
They're very well loved. And I mean, I've been struck, like I have purchased 2 of the newer American dolls for my kids. I got suckered by Courtney because it was the 80s.
She has the best theme song of all time.
She's a great theme song, and she has strawberry shortcake sleepover accessories. And I was like, you just came for my wallet. Here, take my money.
Absolutely.
And then and like her stuff's fine, but it's like 80s clothes. So it's like, it's a sweatshirt. It's like a slouchy, whatever. But then I got an Enea, excuse me, for my younger daughter. And I mean, the clothes are so beautiful. And I just had like this sense memory of how beautiful my Samantha and Felicity dolls clothes were, right? Like they have this quality to the product that does cost money to make, right? And I think Pleasant would argue you'd drop $80 on a Teddy Ruxpin and not think about it. Why not this beautiful heirloom doll? I'm not here to argue the cost escalation, but I do wonder if you think the dolls would have had the same sort of cultural cachet and staying power if they had been like a lower price point product that felt maybe a little more disposable.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely probably true. I also think the exclusivity of you have to buy it from the catalog. I think that created so much cachet.
Which I think she did to keep costs down, at least least that was
Yes.
like her reason that she gave.
I mean, it's hard to believe her financial, spitballing. I would love to see their books.
Show me this business plan you drew up in.
I mean, yeah, because like we did the catalog, we were doing direct shipping, we're doing like not a lot of advertising, but these dolls are expensive. The molds are coming from Germany, like this and that. The quality of the Pleasant Company stuff is very high. So it's plausible. But I also think she was aware that if you create mystique around something like, oh, these are rare, like you can't just, she's not like all the other girls, you got to buy her from the catalog. I think that higher price point, once other kids are into it and you have that word of mouth, the kid pressure will make parents do almost anything.
Parents will crumble.
Yes.
Yeah, no, the parents will crumble. I'm a parent who has crumbled for sure.
It's a safe space.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I mean, they did expand the universe. As you said, there was the magazine, there's the Care and Keeping of You, which I definitely saw on the shelf over there. It has been joined by other titles since that, I think as our understanding of what our conversations with kids around our bodies and their functions can be, there's plenty of other titles on the shelf over there too, but it has staying power, right? For those who relied on that. Again, was it, in your sense, was it to bring more people into the fold that they expanded, or did it seem like a natural extension of the brand out to like the modern kid?
I think she started from a place of wanting girls to get interested in history and to empower them by putting them at the center of the story. But then I think when she saw the runaway success, she genuinely was like reading things. And when she saw concerns that girls were having or needs that needed to be met, like an article in the New York Times talking about needing to have better health information for girls. I mean, she circled that and highlighter and like gave it to someone at Pleasant Company and was like, we need to do something about this. And that leads to the Care and Keeping of You. So I do genuinely think that it wasn't necessarily like, let's sell more stuff. I think it was like, well, now we have their ear. Let's try to reach them about lots of things.
Yeah, I mean, there does seem to be a genuine sense of service to kids who, again, had not necessarily been centered even in the marketing to children in an interesting way at that point in time. We're going to talk for a few more minutes, but then we are going to open it up for your questions too. So just be thinking of what you're going to ask before we toss over for your questions. You have heard from so many people and talked to a lot of people on the podcast about American Girl. How did you decide which stories to include in the book as you were thinking through all of the conversations you've had, all of the messages you've gotten, all of the amazing creators out there who are making clothes for themselves and their dolls and creating amazing Instagram narratives, and just doing so much with the brand in creative and interesting ways? How did you think through who to include?
That's a great question. I mean, I felt as you were writing it, I always felt badly like, oh, like this other great story would be great in here, but it's not going to fit. And partially the conversation was determined by, we had a storytelling project on our website where people could share their experiences and then grant us permission to include it in the book or on the show. So consent really mattered to me. So that determined a lot of it. But also, people doing a lot of really cool social media work. There's just so much great stuff out there.
And so many accounts while I was reading this book.
I know. And there's people who came on the scene after we had submitted the book, because there's over a year that passes between when the book we submit it and it comes out. So I would go on TikTok and see things and be like, oh my God, if only I could have included this person who like reads the store display of American Girl as like lesbian cosplay, if you know what I'm talking about. And I was like so upset when that happened because I was like, oh my God, I really want to put that in the book. But it was just like, so I had to make some hard choices. But some stories were like about the girl who had her dad read the catalog to her as a book when she was going to sleep. Yeah, exactly. I mean, every time I read that, I was having that response, but I wanted something to kind of communicate what the catalog meant to people. So that was like a natural fit for that section. So that's kind of how it worked.
You just alluded to this, and another thing we have in common, Mary, both raised Catholic.
Buckle up, everyone.
Hold on to your seats, everybody. But I mean, it's a culture where queer people were not embraced and still largely are not. Cool Pope, only so cool.
I'm pretty sure he said no homo.
He definitely said
he used a different word, but
yeah, he did.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. You note in the book that even before you recognized yourself as being a queer person, you sort of recognize something in Molly, and you've noted like some of the other dolls that you've read, like Kit, where you're like, yes, I see it.
Yeah.
I see myself in this story. And I wonder if you think, you also share some examples of, like, I think one of the characters has two aunts, right, who are in a marriage, I believe. And I wonder if you think they've gotten better at including sort of narratives that are LGBTQIA or just different, period, as the brand has grown and our culture has shifted.
Right. So this is where I want to introduce like the idea of a like history not as a story of progress, because I wish the answer to that question was yes.
Yes.
But earlier we were talking about the care and keeping of you, and they have these Smart Girl guides that have come out as updated versions of that kind of content. And they came out with one about health in 2022, in which they mainly say, if you don't feel like a girl, that's okay. And find an adult you trust and talk to them about it. And if you have a crush on a girl, that's fine. Now, that would be radical content still in my family for someone to say to me, like, if you have a crush on a girl, it's okay. But for kids today, I would think that that's pretty tame, right? But a group of conservatives freaked out, they protested, and the brand did not come out with a statement to wholeheartedly defend the content. What they did was pull just that book off of their store.
Wow.
So if you go on the website now, it's not there. The other Smart Girls guides are there. That one's not. And the only place you can buy it is on Amazon. And I feel so strongly about this. This is not what we need right now. Yeah. It is so hard to be trans in this world. It is so hard to be queer in this world. And this is a force that can really help kids who are so vulnerable and, maybe are scared. Maybe they live in a family where it's not safe. And, that's what books were for me. Books were such a window to conversations I couldn't have in my family. So it's so it's so like just guts me that that's the choice they made. So I want the answer to be yes, but it's not.
And I think, as you note, right, like I think often we do think of history as being linear and progress as being always on a path toward moral good or improvement. And you're so right to point out that we do not always see that, whether it's in, these cultural touchstones that we hold or laws and policies. I mean, I feel very fortunate to live in DC, where people are largely free and welcome to be themselves, whatever that looks like. But I know that is not the case in every pocket.
Yeah. And I mean, it's concerning because, when we think about history related products or things in the world, like, people will misuse history all the time to further their own agenda. I mean, we're in the city of, I flew into Reagan Airport. Don't love what that's called, but
national.
Okay. Thank you. I'll adopt that. But, Reagan was famous for playing Born in the USA by Bruce Springsteen at his initial events. And it's like, babe, did you listen to the lyrics?
No. Probably not.
So it's just, people. So it's like he wasn't even listening to the lyrics, but deploying this kind of, drum pounding patriotism and romanization of a select version of the past. So it's like, I hope American Girl doesn't go down that road.
Yeah, here's hoping. I have one more question and then like a rapid fire round of questions for you. And then we're going to take audience questions. So in the book, you note that after making the podcast, after writing the book, you still haven't pulled your own American Girls out of storage, your Molly, or even know for sure where she is. Can I ask why?
The great question. I was actually just at an event on Long Island this past weekend, and my parents were with me, and somebody asked me that, and I just pointed to my parents in the crowd, and I'm like, explain yourself. And there's a part of me that hopes they're not on eBay. Like I like to tease them, like my parents have sold them all on
Look,
eBay,
they held their
but
value. The
I
Beanie
mean,
Baby is tanked, but the American Girl dolls have like held their
maybe it's my
value.
retirement plan. I don't know, but it's partially because it was never about the dolls for me. It was always about the stories and the magazine. But partially and candidly, my grandmother, was so close to her, and she didn't give me my American Girl dolls, but she gave me a lot of other dolls, and they're all together somewhere in my parents' attic. And I think if I were to go through that stuff, like when she passed in 2015, I was just so grief stricken that to go through the things that she gave to me was really difficult. But, I moved into a house last year and I was able to bring her dollhouse from the 1930s with me, which I've always wanted to have somewhere where I lived, never could. And I want to restore it. So I don't know, maybe I'll find it. Maybe you'll see their face on a milk carton. I don't know. We'll have to see.
We will stay tuned to find out. And
Yes.
you write really beautifully about your grandmother. Thank you for sharing her with all of us. It's really beautiful.
Thank you.
And we're going to do a rapid fire round as you think of your questions and start getting ready to raise your hands. 80s and 90s themed. Which you would prefer?
90s.
No. Sorry. We haven't started. General Hospital or Days of Our Lives?
Days of Our Lives.
I mean, you kind of have to say that.
Yeah.
Labyrinth or The Princess Bride?
Princess Bride.
Yeah. Debbie Gibson or Tiffany?
Debbie Gibson.
Deborah.
Excuse me. I respect her adult pivot.
We do respect a grown.
Although I think You're Alone Now is such a great song.
I think You're Alone Now is why I tip towards Tiffany. Also, again,
because of their red hair. Yeah.
Just where we band together.
You kind of have to.
Pepsi or Coke? Poll Awards.
I used to be addicted to Diet Coke, so I'm going to say that.
Okay. TRL or pop-up video?
That's the real Sophie's choice, isn't it? Pop-up video, but it's hard.
By hair. Yeah. All right, I have two more. YM or 17?
17.
Okay. Polly Pocket or a Pound Puppy?
Polly Pocket, no question. I want to go to the Airbnb. Take me.
It looks amazing and terrifying both at the same time. I know. Like, this is a fever dream.
I don't camp, so the fact that it involves camping, that's hard for me. I wish they had thought about that.
Same.
Like, it's not safe for Leo. You know what I mean?
What's in it for us?
Yeah, exactly. Is there air conditioning? I'm sorry, Polly would want that.
She's plastic. Climate is warming.
It's fantastic. Yeah.
All right, y'all. It's your turn. Questions? Yes.
I'd like to preface this question first by saying that I'm not pro or against Pleasant, Mattel, or Dolls of Our Lives. I think there's a place for all of them in the broader conversations. I think that they've all acted from places of positive intention. So with that being said, first of all, thank you for starting the podcast, because that's what really propelled me into my American Girl renaissance as an adult. I hadn't thought about it in so many years, but I performed at the theater at Chicago's American Girl Place when I was growing up.
Oh my God.
Felicity was the first character that I played. So when I did start listening to your podcast, I had some mixed feelings because you were not particularly kind to Felicity. And, I know you brought up some criticisms of the various authors, particularly Valerie Tripp and of Pleasant. And, I thank you for the really thoughtful insights you brought around all sorts of different topics related to American Girl and not. I think it's really in true American Girl fashion. Something that I took from American Girl was that it made me want to hear different perspectives and to appreciate different perspectives. And I think you really brought that to your podcast, your book. That said, especially since you are an academic, and, clearly you and Allison are so good about the source material that you go to, and, you are very particular about trusted sources. I'm curious if you have ever reached out to Pleasant or Valerie or these other people who were involved in forming the company, or if you plan to, or if there ends up being a sequel to Dolls of Our Lives, is that something worth considering? Because I've met Valerie and she's a lovely person. I think there is not an unkind bone in her body, and she truly wanted to give so much with these books. And I also know that Connie, who wrote the Addie stories, did not particularly feel that it was Felicity's place to tell the story of enslaved people. So I'm curious, just from your perspective, have you gone to the very first most sources to get their perspective to talk about some of these bigger, more complex issues, or do you have plans to do so?
I'm going to try to briefly summarize that for people listening on the internet. So the question is from someone who played Felicity on the American Girl stage, asking about, the levels of complexity that you have brought to looking at American Girl and the different narratives, and the question of whether you have or plan to reach out to Pleasant and Valerie Tripp. Does that capture the essence as briefly as possible? Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you for your question. I think people have asked us before if we were going to talk to Pleasant or Valerie, and candidly, that was never part of our plan because we never wanted to write a corporate history of American Girl. I mean, there is a history to be written that talks about their intention. And there is, I know, a documentary film in production right now that does talk to both of them. And it was always our goal to kind of write a history of what it meant to generations of fans. So that was more of our focus. And, candidly, I think we say in the book, and we've said on the show, that how much we admire Valerie Tripp. And we write in the book that, were she to write this book and write the Felicity books in 2020, 2019, whenever we read her books, I think she might have made maybe different choices. I don't think that by saying some of the story choices are not what I would do in 2020, that I'm casting aspersions on the very real and sincere intentions of Pleasant Rowland or Valerie Tripp. I think for us, it was important in terms of sources to seek out people who were, yes, involved in the development of the brand, but really about the people who received the brand and what they did with it. That was more interesting to me than Pleasant. I mean, we captured, I feel like people who I know have interviewed her, she doesn't really go much further than the things that she has said in printed interviews. She has her answers that she gives on these same questions. So it wasn't really the book we set out to write. Certainly there is another book I know, I think someone's writing about American Girl, and maybe that's the tack that they'll take. But that unfortunately, it's an unsatisfying answer probably, but that's my answer. It's not the book we tried to write.
Yes.
Thank you for coming. I loved your book, and I loved American Girl growing up. So it's so much fun to read it. And I now, probably spurred in part by my love for the magazine, I now work as an editor at a magazine.
Oh my God.
Not a very big one. As an editor, I know it can be really hard to cut stuff from an article or a book. So I'm curious if there's anything really fun or interesting you learned that you didn't get to put in the book.
Oh, great question. I'm going to repeat it. Sorry, I'm going to repeat the question. The question is basically from an editor. How did you edit out some great stuff that just didn't make it into the book? How did you make those choices?
Well, some of those choices were made for us by the pandemic. So when we proposed the book, we were going to go on more trips and write about it. We wanted to go to Aurora, the town that is so special to Pleasant, and think about that. And we wanted to go, different places of the time periods of the different dolls. But the pandemic happened and we had to kind of pivot a little bit. Something I wish we had more time for was we wanted to kind of work with some influencers under the false premise that they had to teach us how to be an AG influencer. And we just didn't end up doing it for a variety of reasons and time. But yeah, I mean, there's, like you were mentioning before, there were so many great stories that unfortunately just didn't make it into the book. But I mean, pretty much we knew going in we wanted it to be 6 chapters for the 6 books. We kind of stayed with that. But yeah, the pandemic was probably the biggest editor in many ways.
Scuttled some plans. Yes, in the green.
So
as someone who did have a somewhat more complicated relationship with American Girl, I felt I was more of a Pia. My mom felt I was more of an Addie. Do you think of things like Felicity Merriman, the Instagram account, the SNL American Girl sketch, in light of the way in which like Felicity Merriman will often, the creators there will cast certain dolls as more progressive or more conservative or more worthy of mockery, etc. And the SNL sketch has that like very clear cut to Addie when they're all discussing their traumas and things like that. Do you think that's like, do you view it as coming from more of like a cultural determination in many ways to engage with that complication through humor, or do you view it as more of just like a humorous thing that sort of emerged at a time where I think in some ways due to the pandemic and due to other factors, American Girl was having somewhat of a renaissance for millennials, other things.
Yeah, that's it. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh no, I will once again attempt to summarize the question. From a Kaya whose mom thought she was an Addie, asking about whether some of the SNL skits around American Girl doll and some of the Instagram accounts that are using humor to sort of put different values onto some of these dolls and are in this current moment are using humor to get at these cultural sort of issues and tensions that might be under the surface of some of these narratives. Does that roughly? Okay.
So I think it depends who's doing it. I think some of the individual makers I've seen on social media have used memes in a really interesting way to have provoke thoughtful questions and conversations around the very real politics of the books and the historical periods they represent. Sometimes they're just fun. My issue with the SNL video is like they didn't get basic facts right. And, I just sort of feel like if one of the writers could have hit the Wikipedia page even, we could have just gotten some basic info correct here. But I think what's interesting when you mention Addie in that video, and even in some of the meme culture, accounts, to be clear, created by white users, they often are very afraid to engage Addie except as this like noble figure who is incapable of like being part of this like fun other meme culture. And to me, that's a really interesting piece. To me, it's revealing of like the discomfort white people have talking about Black history and histories of slavery even. So like that's kind of interesting. I haven't seen that come up in conversations around these memes, and I wish more people would kind of get into that. I think it's kind of people wanting to have fun with these memes. Like some of them are like absolutely insane about like, the Donner Party and, whatever, we need an American Girl who ... And they can be really fun, but there's a great book called, oh my God, I'm going to blank on it, but it's by oh God, Memes Over Movements, I think it's called, but it's about the use of memes in things like Ferguson and in China and a really fascinating political movement. So it's like memes can actually be really serious and have serious intention. So I always take them seriously. So that's kind of what I take from that use of humor, if that makes sense.
Probably have time for two more. Yes. Sorry.
I am a graduate student in the museum and public history world. We've actually spoken before for a project I was doing a few years ago. And I'm just interested, we've seen a lot of how, especially in the past when like Colonial Williamsburg had publicity-based programming that was so popular and then had to go away for, I think, some legal reasons, copyright reasons. But American Girl, but just so many fictional characters, historical fiction characters that are so important to children learning history, that get people to care about history. I'm curious how you think like either schools or museums or that type of setting can kind of engage that when teaching a student about history.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry.
I'm blowing it.
No, you're doing great. So the question from a grad student in history and public history and asking about the fact that Felicity programming used to be a part of what Colonial Williamsburg was doing, you do write about this in the book, so I'm just going to tell everybody to be sure to buy a copy, read more about it. The fact that they have stopped doing that, but how can the dolls be used to engage more students, whether it's in schools or other sites?
Well, I think, you know, just as a basic point, they should be used. I mean, I think there has been a reticence among some museum folks. I know there's museum people here I respect, archive people. Shout out to all of you who are better experts than I am. But I think for a while there was a reticence to engage American Girl because there was a thought that it was sort of not passe, but that like young kids didn't know it as well anymore as when I was younger. But now with the resurgence of it, I think you can think more expansively about kind of the stories you can tell with them. And I think it's a great way to introduce material culture, for example, like to really go back to Pleasant's really great original idea of bringing in objects and the stories of real people to kind of humanize the past. I think that that's missing from a lot of spaces and making things fun. And I would also like be open to co-creating with kids about how they would bring in American Girl to museums. I don't know. I feel like kids are smart.
Kids are smart. All right, one more question I think we have time for, right? Yeah.
I just think that I'm a Leo from New England as well. I say it as a Leo.
Of course you did.
I guess this one's not as like in depth as everyone else's questions. I have been curious, and maybe it's not a spicy answer, why the name changed from American Girl to Dolls of Our Lives. Not that I have no bias on either. I was just curious. You probably get that one a lot, huh?
The allegedly non-spicy but spicy questions, possibly a spicy question from our Leo from Massachusetts, is why the title of your show changed from American, well, originally it was American Girl.
American Girls.
American Girls, thank you. To Dolls of Our Lives.
So I would love to take you back to the year 2019 when we started our show. And there was not a huge adult Renaissance interest in American Girl. We start our show, bada bing, bada boom, things happen, not just because of us, but there's the pandemic, you know, all these things that contribute to a rise in popularity. Suddenly, now they're launching a historical doll that's aimed at millennials. Courtney, shout out to you. Courtney, 1986, great theme song. How should I say this? Then the brand decided they wanted to put out some things that might appeal to adults, including a podcast network that had a show where they interviewed people associated with the brand to basically sell things. They revisited some of the old books. Sound familiar? And around that time, we changed the name of our show. I can't say more than that.
Nor should you.
But we'll leave it there. It's kind of like the work of history is I present facts and then you get to do context and interpretation. So I'm going to invite you to be a historian and leave it there.
Right. Did you have an online question? Yes. Okay.
How did you find planning out the book writing, and do you have a favorite part about being a published author?
Oh, great question. So how did you find the process of planning out the book and putting it together, and how do you like being a published author?
Imagine if I said I hate it.
It's the worst.
Sometimes I say this to my wife when we're going in somewhere. I'm like, should I come out as straight at this event? Like, my wife's like, please stop. I don't know why I married you. Just kidding. But I genuinely loved writing this book in a way that I never loved writing anything when I was in grad school. It was like somebody took the training wheels off, and like writing in grad school was great. I loved learning to research. I love the work of history, and writing something for a very niche audience that's meant to basically show my bona fides and impress people I've never met and don't really care about. Not for me, as it turns out, but talking to everyone is something I really genuinely love doing, and I care a lot about making history accessible. So writing the book was wonderful. I have like vivid memories of sitting at my IKEA kitchen table writing chapter 2 of this book. We split up some of the writing, so I wrote chapter 2 by myself, and after I finished it, I just like sat back from it and was like, I think this is like the thing I'm most proud of that I've ever written. And I felt like so happy about it. And also just like you mentioned my grandmother before, but when I was growing up, I really loved like Sarah Vowell and writers like that. And those are the books I want to continue to write, things that are kind of like memoir, travel, history. And my grandmother always like dreamed that I would get to write a book. So my one sadness is my grandmother never got to meet my wife and she never saw me publish this book. But perhaps she knows. But yeah, being a published author is great because when we were doing the podcast, it was just the two of us, and I was in my PJs. So now, I can't wear my PJs to these events, but it's been so heartening and very humbling to meet people who care about American Girl just as much as I do, and for whom it's, produced your own story or informed your own story. So that's been really gratifying.
That's a beautiful answer and a great note for us to leave it on. We'll hand it over to Lainey Rose, and maybe next time with your next book, we'll make your event a pajama party, and then you can have everything you want.
Okay, one more round of applause for these lovely people. Woo! Okay, so I am going to send these two lovely folks back into our green room area, and then I will go over some of our signing. Let's give them another applause as they walk off. Yeah. And now it's my show. So we are going to take just a moment to reset the space to get ready for the signing line. If you have not purchased a copy already, we do have copies upstairs. They are available. We are going to set up the signing line down that way, but don't get into line immediately because we got to put away chairs and stuff. When we do start the signing line, we will have folks kind of set up by the mind, body, spirit area where there's that kind of like hole in the wall. You'll see. So just give us a few, like probably 5-ish minutes to reset the space. If you're willing and able in a moment to put your chairs to the side so that our staff can collect them, we would appreciate that. And just a reminder that we are asking folks to be masked in the signing line. We have extra masks at the info desk that you can acquire, and I will be coming through and doing post-it notes for your names so that we can spell them correctly. Thank you all so much for being here tonight. Thank you to our virtual audience. We appreciate it so much. Our events are made possible because of all of you and because of your book purchases. So books are upstairs. Signing line will be down there. Thank you all for being here tonight.